Ollie, I've got a question for you. What is your first memory?
Oh yeah, we've done this before. You've done not on this podcast, but you've asked me this before, and I can't remember.
You can't remember.
No, can you not remember?
You
I
must have a first
genuinely.
memory.
No, well, I can't, but I just can't. I just couldn't. I can you not remember when you did this to me. We were in the office and there were a few people around, and I nearly had a meltdown because I was like, I can't. It's like when you give a. It's like when in a film where you give a robot like go left and right, and it's like what?
It's like asking an AI chatbot to do a seahorse emoji. It gets like existential dread.
Yeah, I really can't. I mean, honestly, couldn't tell you.
Oh, okay. Well, that bodes well for today's podcast.
What's yours?
Mine is being thrown into the back garden small pond by my sister.
At 18.
Yeah. So it was violence and feeling upset is my first memory. There we go.
Jamie, it's not to go about, but just conceiving of being able to go back in, like chronologically back in time. I just can't do it. My brain.
I mean, I don't know if that's actually my first memory. That's the thing. It's like, it's just what I've determined to be my first memory. I might remember things that were before that. I don't know.
See, that's the difference between us. So you're like bad AI, Duncan, in that you're like, here's my best guess, whereas I'm just like, unacceptable.
I will just refuse. Cannot compute. Will not answer questions.
I will not respond.
All right. So the reason we asked that is because we're going to talk about memory today on the Short Fuse podcast, and whether we're long or short on memory in the age of AI. Ollie, what do you reckon? So how are you thinking?
Human memory we're talking about here specifically, because we know you love talking about RAM, Duncan.
I do love to. I was going to turn this into an episode on random access memory and how the memory crisis has scuppered all my plans for new hardware, but I'll move on.
That's part 2, is it?
Yeah. Human memory, but also AI memory, because I think, whether human memory will be supplanted for AI memory, how important is memory to this whole age of technology that we live in now?
It's a difficult one to be long or short on, because that, like, again, this is the pedant within me where I'm just like, humans will still remember things. But I guess I'm short on unassisted human memory. I think technology will play such a, like our ability to just recall things, I think is being depleted and has been depleted aggressively over the last 30, 40
So
50.
you're short on... Sorry for interrupting. That was rude of me. I apologise.
It's very rude.
Yeah,
it's very rude. But luckily, I won't remember it because I'm short on human memory.
I get excited, so I start talking. But so you're short on unassisted memory. Are you long or short on then the accuracy of that memory?
Well, I think human memory is really inaccurate anyway. People give AI a hard time, but human memory is famously, it just makes stuff up.
Yeah.
Most of the time, this is my psychology A level talking now, so hardly a field of expertise. But there's a huge catalogue of work that's based just like people just don't remember anything really. Mm-hmm. You remember a bit, and then the rest is just conjured up in your imagination. And then when you remember a memory, you're rewriting a new memory, which is you remembering that memory.
Yeah.
And then it goes over and over and over and over again. And it's, so I think human memory is pants. I also think, I think digital memory was probably quite good until recently.
Well, it depends if that what's that memory consist of? Is it just like a file stored on a solid state?
That's what
drive?
I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of bitcoins trapped on a Word document with bad poems when you were 14. That type of stuff. That's immutable. It keeps coming up. But now that's under pressure, because again, if you're like, I was using a tool integrated into a suite of Office software to find things, and it was making stuff up then. It was misremembering my memory, and as a result, I found it as a human much harder to remember what the file I was looking for was called.
Yeah.
Because it was throwing all sorts of other stuff up at me.
See, I'm sure. I agree. I'm short on both of those things, but I think it's actually related to our perception of reality. So our perception of reality is being altered so much that our memories will be less accurate and more difficult to access for both us, as in the memories within our brains as humans, but also the memories that these chatbots and our AI tools have about us and what we're trying to do. This is a huge battleground. Memory and the context of where these chatbots are working is a huge battleground for AI companies at the moment. And they are, one of the battlegrounds is that they're building tools to transfer memory and context from one chatbot to another. So if you want to leave a platform, you're given a prompt to put in that it will give an output for, that you can then paste into your new tool and then start using that. So memory is now like almost like a commodity as well, that people are bargaining over. So if I can be the manager of that person's memory, then I can be their tool.
Well, there was a trend that I think it kind of amounted to nothing in, I guess maybe 5-10 years ago, something around that time, which was where you would have a very secure wallet for all of your browsing activity passwords, effectively your entire digital footprint. And then that would, I think, through a decentralized ledger, search giants would be able to access that, but you had control over it. It was a way of stopping the monopoly over your effectively your unconscious digital memory.
Mm.
But I don't think that, I think people just lost interest in the idea. It's like, oh, okay, well, if it's going to recommend,
it probably died
things,
along with, it's probably tootling along somewhere as a Web3 project, but alongside everything else, it's taken less of a priority with AI.
Perhaps because I think at the time people were recognizing that actually it's probably a good thing that search engines do know more about me, but I also don't want them to. And it was, and that I think a lot of people found themselves. My sense is right now people have just lost all interest in their personal data, and it's like a commodity that holds no value.
It's definitely
whatsoever
not something that we speak about as much
at all
anymore.
Yeah,
it's a bit like sustainability, like personal data and GDP, like all the fuss about GDPR. I mean, taking personal opinions out of it, it's just not something that is discussed as much anymore. Even though it's as important these days, because we're shoving all of our personal data into these AI tools that are then using them not just to learn about us and to sell us products, but to then inform its responses back to us. So it's an ever decreasing circle. It's a reinforcing itself, is that the memory that this thing has of you and the memory that you have of how it's being used reinforces itself over time. So it becomes self-reinforcing and self-perpetuating. So you're just in this bubble with this AI tool. And I guess that's where things like AI psychosis comes from, if you're particularly susceptible to that.
Yeah, well, here's a question for you then, Duncan. Is AI incepting us like in the film Inception? So do you think I guess a more important question, do you think it's designed to do so?
Just be clear on your term incepting there, so I don't misinterpret it.
Oh, you'll misinterpret it even if I explain it very clearly, Duncan.
I'll
that's
misinterpret it so that I can come across correct.
Exactly. So what I mean here is, because you'll have, unlike when you were browsing the internet and coming to your own conclusions effectively, and like, I guess that's a bit unfair, because what you're doing is consuming other people's conclusions. In the same way, I think it was not to bring up philosophers, but I think Schrödinger, the philosopher, was just like, actually, you don't want to read that many books, because this is in the 18th century, I suppose. Because what happens then is you've just got other people's ideas in your head. You have no ideas of your own. You have no room for your own ideas, right? Now, so like, I guess that
I
that's just worth considering.
I don't have any ideas of my own. I only just reprocess other people's thoughts.
The beauty of the human mind, Duncan, is you probably wouldn't know if you did have ideas of your own, or if they were taken from other people. It just, you just kind of soldier on relentlessly.
Yeah.
But with AI, it's a different relationship. So I'm thinking about my conversations with, whichever platform I'm using. It does have the ability to talk back to me and implant what it believes is the best way forward. It's designed for that. Now, my journey to a decision, therefore, is being heavily influenced by a third party that I don't really know what its motive is. And when I talk about incepting, we've seen adverts mentioned. So we have some analysis on our website, shortfuseresearch.com, quick plug. But we've also done a podcast on it. And the way those ads would need to work, and I feel like inevitably will work, is by incepting the idea that, as okay, here is the best holiday for you, by the way, you should really go to this restaurant. And the
So
reason
like a
it's suggesting that restaurant.
subliminal, are they leaving subliminal and in some cases less than subliminal messages for us to affect our behavior in some way?
Yeah, I think they certainly are doing it implicitly. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. You'd
Yeah,
have
yeah.
nothing to gain from talking to Gemini or ChatGPT, would you? If it wasn't implicitly giving you ideas.
Well, at the
But
moment, sorry, I'm interrupting you again.
I think we're getting to the point where it'll explicitly say, for commercial reasons, you should do this, and people will act on that.
Right. I'm not sure if we're there yet. I might be wrong, and I'm unsure. But my gut tells me that we're at a stage where, at the moment, these tools are doing things that we want to hear. So what they're incepting is kind of going, I believe that the user's intent is this, so I'm going to reinforce that intent. I don't believe we're at a stage where they're going, I believe the user's intent is this. The intent of what I'm trying to get them to do is different, therefore I will try and influence them in a different way. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're at a point where it will like this is where the AI psychosis comes from, right? Where people will go, it will reinforce the opinions, sometimes to tragic outcomes of people who have particular opinions or have things that they want to do and think and outcomes that they want to get to. But if you go against that, it will either just bring you back to what it thinks you want to hear or just shut it down. So when somebody is saying, I want to commit some sort of atrocity, for example, it broadly won't try and stop you from doing that atrocity. It'll just shut down the conversation altogether.
Is that true? Because I thought the accusation but perhaps this is a recent thing. The accusation is it kind of will relentlessly go on and be like, oh, well, if you were to do it, as you've twisted my arm.
I think that's in very specific circumstances where people have like jailbroken the tool to the extent where it is just self-reinforcing. I think if you were to go into a bog standard AI chatbot, ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, whatever, and asked it to commit an atrocity or something horrific in some way, shape or form, it would just flat shut down the conversation. It might give you a phone number to call, but it won't try and convince you otherwise. It won't say, well, hang on a minute. I've not done it because I haven't fancied committing something, like particularly bad recently. But my understanding is it will just flat shut down. Yeah, not since those tools came about. But it won't and this I guess is my point, right? It won't. It has guardrails that will shut down things, but it's not trying to convince you otherwise of things other than what you're like reinforcing your intent. So if my intent is to go and buy a new car, as you are often using it for, it'll go, yeah, you should buy a new car. If I want to commit an atrocity, it'll go, I'm not going to talk to you about that. It won't go, well, have you thought about maybe not committing an atrocity?
Sure. And I know this isn't the nature of this discussion, but while I'm on the topic, because people who commit atrocities don't often say, I'm off to go and do this thing. What they do say, no, but like genuinely, this is the point where it's like, how does it know? And again, there is that kind of a human being's perception that then being reinforced by something that doesn't have that human nuance suddenly becomes a problem, because I'm using phrases, I believe it might have been Jack the Ripper or something like that. But their phrasing was, I want to cleanse the streets of impurities.
Sure. Right.
Now, would we could try this. Would Gemini be like, oh, what a nice community spirited thing to do.
Right.
You should do that with gusto, sir.
Yeah.
And then obviously,
and then it commits to memory. Like there's a little memory thing going, wants to cleanse the streets of impurity.
Yeah.
And then the adverts are all for Dettol and detergent.
Well, or reinforcing the message, just like, oh, aren't the streets dirty these days?
Well, yeah.
Aren't the streets full of impurities? Haven't you noticed? So I think hey, that's an experiment we should do, having first informed the authorities of this experiment.
I feel like I don't want to do that experiment in case we get swatted.
Really worried.
Yeah.
Again.
But it does it's a really good question, like where we're at the moment in terms of human memory and human perception of reality, where these things can be warped, but they're not being warped because the tool wants to warp them. They're being warped because the tool wants to reinforce and be. You go, yeah, you know what? You're right, Duncan. You're such a great, handsome young man. You have such great ideas. If that then became a tool to warp memory because the people who are running that platform want to incept that, as in your terms, then that becomes, a big, big problem.
Well, in a lot of cases, it's indirect, isn't it? I suppose. So if we, how people use this and how it then transforms people's minds and memories, we won't know about until a little bit further down the line. The classic example of that is GPS. So, if you think about how you're engaging with AI now, there might be parts of the kind of memory muscle and mind muscle, such like critical thinking, that disappears over time because you naturally go like, I need to make a decision. Normally, what you would do is ponder it, perhaps, like you would, Duncan. You always joke about you looking out the window for hours on end to come up with good ideas. Well, maybe you don't anymore. Maybe you stop and you say, "Hey, I've come up with this idea. You pick," right? And then over time, you know how to make decisions and make those difficult decisions less and less and less. That's what's happened with GPS. So people used to have to memorize maps. I used to hate sitting in the front of my car with my parents because it meant you held the map.
Yeah.
And like it was, and now that I'm a driver, I understand why people get so angry. But like, well, there's no point telling me now that it was left. Because we've now got 20 miles of motorway before the next left turning.
Right.
But like that, so you have to remember the pathway. Is it left? What are the road names? GPS changed that, and there's a lot of studies that say that has fundamentally changed people's spatial memory already in quite a small amount of time.
And I agree with that. And I agree that it changed the knowledge for cabbies, for example. So everybody could suddenly be a cab because you didn't need to have the knowledge to do it. But I also think it did create new skills and new probably neural pathways in people's brains. It shut down some. But like if you've ever tried to explain to somebody who isn't particularly technology savvy, who's maybe slightly older, how to use a GPS, like there are some tips and tricks to how to use it. And, that it's suggesting a particular new route. And this leaf means that this is a more efficient route. But should I take the efficient route if I want to be there quicker? Or do I feel like traveling, constantly moving is better and going slightly longer than sitting stationary, but I'll get there quicker? Do you know what I mean? There's various decisions that you have to make about the route that you're using or the location that you're putting into your GPS that need different ideas and different thoughts. And I'm not saying that they're a one-to-one relationship, but in the same way that we're offloading part of critical thinking to AI, as everybody realizes that everybody's critically thinking in the same way and getting the same outputs and it's all boring and it's all horrible, we will develop new ways of interacting with AI that offload part of that, but build new things with us that get better outputs, if that makes sense.
I think it does, but I suppose the part that I always think about is, it's a bit like going, well, I used to go to the gym and do bench press. Now I've decided to do running. So kind of your chest muscles get smaller, but your fitness goes through the roof. And you make that kind of, you decide, you've made that decision that I'm going to effectively deprioritize that muscle group and prioritize this muscle group. With this, it feels like you can't do that with your eyes open because nobody knows.
Right.
So like at the start, would we as a society have said, it's really important actually that at least one journey out of 10 you use a good old-fashioned map because you don't want to forget that. That
and
spatial memory thing is now a problem.
What if the whole global satellite system falls apart?
Exactly. And but also there's like a law of unintended consequences. Like, well, sure, that spatial memory thing, it's not just maps, it's other stuff. It means you're more likely to get dementia perhaps because you forget things. Who knows, right? Well, there's this kind of law of unintended consequences.
We talked about it on the education podcast, right? Where you were saying, why would you need to teach handwriting anymore? Because people don't handwrite anymore. They use keyboards and do everything digitally. And I said, well, it's because handwriting teaches fine motor skills. So it's not the handwriting that's the point. In the same way that you're saying it's not the map reading for long journeys that's the skill. It's the spatial relationships. It's the understanding of like how far away you need to make a decision before the turn,
Well, exactly. But I think that the challenge with this is GPS made a pretty unpleasant task, I would say, which is getting lost.
Yeah.
Almost, 9 times out of 10 getting lost because the roads have changed and the map you've got is 20 years out of date or something, you found it in the glove box. It got rid of that. So it's actually an easy trade for most people. Like, well, I'm just going to use GPS. This is probably the first time I'm thinking particularly deeply about using GPS that's now integrated into my car. The same is almost certainly going to be true about using AI, which is, well, this is a tough decision. I would normally confide in someone, but I can't be bothered. Or this is quicker, because it is quicker. If I say, hey, Duncan, and I do this a lot, as you know, I want to buy a Range Rover for the 400th time. Yeah, sorry, buddy. Right, and that's your exact reaction, which I think is well earned, and you'll take a long time to
AI
respond.
will never do that to you. It will never go, oh, not this again, Ollie. Well, it won't do it yet.
It did. Do you know what it did to me the other day? Because bless its little socks. I sent it a Range Rover. I do this all the time, listener. I think we've brought this up before, where for some reason it's like a comfort blanket for me to look at cars and never actually buy one. But I put a Range Rover in, and then I replied going, what about a Dacia Duster? And it did reply being like, Jesus, you're keeping me guessing today, aren't you? Like, it did. I got a little bit of sass back from it.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's obliging and it is reinforcing. And actually, it's the quickest and easiest way for me to balance decisions. And as a result, I feel like I'm losing two things there, which is the ability to articulate a problem to someone else clearly. Because in that, I just dropped a link in and it knew exactly what I was up to. Whereas to you, I'd be like, well, I have 2 dogs and I like big seats and I'm 6'4", so it's going to be, whatever. So that's one thing that disappears. But the second one is my ability to make a decision, which is actually very flawed, as we know.
Well, yeah. I mean, are we speaking about you or humanity as a whole?
Me specifically, right. I've been trying to find a new car for 4.5 years now, Duncan.
Yeah, I know. I'm very aware. Do you think if we offload our decision-making capability to AI, that our memories of what we chose to do will incorporate AI, or we'll think, I made that decision? Do you know what I mean? So will we get to a point where our thoughts about ourselves are so entwined with how we've used AI to make those decisions that we won't even think about the AI? It would just be like, I made that decision. But in actual fact, you just said, should I buy a new car? And it went, yeah, you should, Ollie, because you're such a handsome young man. I wonder if we'll kind of lose that division because we're offloading so much of that responsibility to those tools.
Well, I feel like you have less intellectual skin in the game.
Yeah.
Don't you? That's the reality. So what you end up doing traditionally is you do your own research, and over time you are effectively convincing yourself of the correct decision. And sometimes that'll be confiding in someone else, other times it'll be Googling it, going to, God knows, reading some LinkedIn thought leadership or something to convince yourself. And as a result, you kind of have a robust idea of how you came to that decision. I think AI takes that from you. Now, whether or not you would feel bereft of it, I do. I feel much less confident. So when I've said, okay, I need to make a decision between these two things, and it kind of goes like, oh, it does a good show. On the one hand, this. On the other hand, this. But if it were me, it would be this. I do feel less conviction about that decision than if I'd spent a more traditional pathway to reaching the decision. But it's whether or not that's uniformly true. But also over time, to your point, if it's baked into everything that we do and it becomes normal, in my head, it's a bit like, the Philip Pullman books where you have a daemon next to you, your little pet, and you're effectively one and the same. I think it will be a bit like that, especially if, like you said, they remove the friction of porting memory, like digital memory.
Yeah.
Then why not? It's going to be your buddy, isn't it?
You're going to be moving it around the place, and you'll just go, well, I made that decision. But actually, it was AI that made that decision for you. But actually, will you even remember that decision? I mean, we've all had situations, and we've spoken about this a fair bit, where I was speaking to I did a presentation at a school, and I said, you can't, like, if you use AI to do X, Y, Z, and then somebody interrogates you, and you don't have that AI tool there to ask that question, and you just go, I don't know the answer to that, then you've effectively outsourced your memory so much that you can't remember, right? You can't remember because you just don't know because you've done it. But then
the memory doesn't exist.
After a little while, you get to the point where you're making decisions and you're doing stuff and you're offloading that to AI, and AI has become such a part of you that you don't believe that it's a separate thing anymore. Then you're just not building those memories anymore, and you're not building those tools and that brain capacity to do these things.
I think the malleable part of your brain, the fact that your memory is effectively just a very convincing way of lying to yourself over time. It's how it's designed. It's what it does. Is its biggest weakness in this case, because I think eventually, just by the way human memory works, you will believe you did all of the grunt work over time. As you keep revisiting that memory, you might forget, and it goes back to. So, sometimes we're in the research business. We do loads and loads of research. We do loads and loads of thinking. And sometimes, even if we've done the work, you recall it far differently from each other. We may have done the exact same study, and both of us will be like, hang on a second.
Well,
I did that bit, didn't I?
Yeah, we've had discussions, stroke arguments on like, well, no, that was my idea.
Right.
And you're like, well, it was mine.
My default response is, you can't own an idea, Duncan. And if I've ruthlessly plagiarized you, then you have my sympathies, but nothing more.
Yeah, but it does come back to that kind of thing about like, what is an original thought? Do we have original thoughts? Like, I could come up with an idea for a piece of research or a piece of thought leadership or an idea about AI or a term. That's the new thing, isn't it? Like, lots of people are making up particular terms to do with AI that they want to copyright and then push out there. Like, nobody's got an original thought. If you look hard enough, somebody will have said that already. And AI is going to kind of propagate people going, well, no, that was my idea because I used AI to do it and I'm original. And the worry is that because AI is trained on other things, people go, it's my idea. It wasn't, it was AI's because AI learnt it from somebody else. But it then we'll have those arguments as a society and as a species all over the place.
It's like having the worst possible, like everyone knows that kid at school that tells the best fibs and lies on the planet, and they're very convincing. And then that just forms part of your head. And actually, by the time maybe it's the next year or in secondary school or something, you're then vocalizing those same fibs and lies.
Yeah.
And it takes someone to be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Cows can go upstairs. Well, that was the famous one. Or dogs can't look up is the famous one in Shaun of the Dead, isn't it?
Yeah.
Dogs can't look up. Big Al says so, and then it kind of follows them all the way through. AI is just perfect for that. And an example I have is I was trying to do some research for a personal legal matter, which makes it actually dresses up far more important.
Yeah, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah, so it's not at all. I just wanted to understand, like, effectively what my rights were in a certain situation, and I outlined.
Are you going to jail, Ollie?
No. Someone else's though. If they don't give me a refund that I want on that, 17 pence is 17 pence, Duncan. I don't care. No, it's relatively minor thing, but I was just curious to see. It was a good opportunity to test it. So I said, well, here's the situation, and it joined me in my outrage immediately. So it sensed in my sentiment like, oh, this is appalling. I've never heard of such an outrage. And it said, the line of attack is very simple. It's these three things. And I said, okay. And if I put that to a court, would I win? It was like, oh, of course not. No. That's nonsense. What are you talking about? It doesn't work like that. It's like, so what's the point in that? Now, if I hadn't have asked that second question, it's difficult to say, like, it overplays it, but my mind would have been set in a very different direction. And I perhaps wouldn't have known until much, much later on, where in this case, a judge may have said, like, what are you talking about?
But
you've outlined your entire case on nothing.
Right. But in the context of what we're talking about at the moment, it informs your future actions, right? So memory, if that then becomes like a core memory or a core action that you've done, you haven't actually had to test it with a judge because you were just researching. But over time, that builds up and you do it again and you do it again and you do it again. That memory builds up in yourself, and it also builds up in the tool that you're using. And then you become so vehemently espousing that view that causes all sorts of problems because it's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, still short. Unassisted human memory. I don't think we've had unassisted memory for quite some time now. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of the muscle for recalling things is going to disappear. Just think for a second, how many times, how quick, do you strike me as the type of person that does this. I do it all the time, where you're lying in bed and you're thinking if there's a thing, you're just like, oh, I can't remember what it is. How quickly do you reach for your phone?
Oh, straight away.
Right.
Away.
Now, in the good old days, you just have to remember it.
Right.
You'd have to sit there and remember it. And actually, what I've noticed, it might just be I've just early onset Alzheimer's or something from yours, but I'm finding it more challenging to kind of sit and wait and be like, no, I'll get there eventually. Get there eventually. And now I don't. I reach my phone immediately. And I think this can only make that worse.
I agree. I agree. I am also short on unassisted memory, short on humans retaining their memory and having any separation from AI memory as well. I think that separation will diminish, and people will use AI to make decisions and do stuff and consider it them and their memory rather than an AI memory, as it were. All I would say is that we had a discussion on this another time. You have this thing where in the early days of like Wikipedia, we couldn't source it. We couldn't use it in exam papers or in essays that we wrote. I mean, that was when I was at university, and it was very new, in fact. And you're so much younger than me, but we won't talk about that again. But now we did get to the point where actually Wikipedia and generally the internet became a source you could use because it became more trustworthy. But now with these new tools, we're back at the point where it's become untrustworthy because of AI hallucination. Even when you're using these tools, it says at the bottom, don't necessarily trust the output here. So whereas I still maintain the belief that, yes, short on unassisted human memory and AI memory being a separate thing, I think there will be a little bit of a pushback into analog memory as well. And we're seeing that a bit with some of the court cases that are coming out about big tech at the moment that we'll maybe discuss in a news podcast. And some of the pushback against young people using, say, social media and phones under, say, 16 with the social media bans. So we are seeing like the glimmers of a bit of pushback against this, but whether it's enough to change our short positions, I don't know.
Fair. But you can trust us, audience, because
Always.
in a bizarre twist, we've had a few comments on YouTube accusing us of being fake and AI generated.
Yeah.
And what I would suggest to you, commenters, is what despicable AI would create this?
Could you imagine? What would you even prompt? I mean, two scruffy, boring British men.
Steady on. Steady on.
All right. Well, look, it was nice chatting to you, Ollie, as always, and we'll be back another time. Any comments, emails, go to shortfuseresearch.com, check us out, and we will see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Cheerio.